That is Turkish national Rümeysa Öztürk, a Turkish national who is here on a student visa at Tufts University. That's her being detained by undercover plainclothes ICE agents. And why am I showing you that video? Because if you turn the sound off and watch it for the first time, which many of you may be, is it hard to tell if it's Russia or Turkey or somewhere other authoritarian country where undercover agents of the police or the federal government can just detain an individual? What they're saying is that she was organizing for Hamas, when the truth is she was one of the co-signers of an op-ed in the student newspaper at her school for urging them to implement a boycott and support of Palestine. That's it. She was a co-author of a op-ed, and she was detained by the police for that, ICE, and is now being held by ICE, probably be deported, and that's what they're going to do because she's organizing for Hamas. And that's where we are. And I show that video up front because I want to ask ourselves, what kind of country are we? You know, I mean, the last 2 months, the sense of decency we had as a nation appears to be disappearing. And there's one more video I want to show you before we go to our guest. And this is another example of what I'm talking about. This video, you may have seen it too, and it's hard to watch, but I want you to watch very carefully and understand what you're seeing when you see this.
I'm here at CCOT today and visiting this facility. And first of all, I want to thank El Salvador and their president for their partnership with the United States of America to bring our terrorists here and to incarcerate them and have consequences for the violence that they have perpetuated in our communities. I also want everybody to know, if you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
That's our own Department of Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, wearing not a suit or professional clothing, street clothes, standing in front of caged prisoners in a third world prison in their underwear, using imprisoned men as a prop. This is actually a violation of the laws of war. That's actually against the Geneva Convention to parade prisoners. And yet here she is, proudly showing off and boasting about what we're going to do to people. The United States of America, and this is being done in our name, by the Trump administration in just 2 months. And I talk about this indecency and this slide towards authoritarianism for a reason. You hear a lot. The show's called On Democracy. And I got a great guest to talk about this difference, the difference between decency. Because, you know, you may remember this picture. That's then freshman Congressman Andy Kim cleaning up the rotunda of the Capitol after January 6th, which became a symbol at the time for the kind of decency we need as a nation. The decency that understands and respects the Capitol, respects our institutions. Representative Kim went on from there to eventually run for Senate, and he's now a freshman senator from New Jersey. And I want to talk to him at this moment, and I'm fortunate we get to have him as a guest now, so I'm excited to go on the show. But I want you to think about, as we had this conversation we're about to have when the senator joins us, about what kind of a country do we want to be in the United States? Are we going to be decent or indecent? And it starts right there and goes everything else happened. The indecency, the disgusting actions that undermine who we are as Americans. And you can see this administration is proud of it. Are you? Ask that question yourself. So I'm excited to have this great show. As always, I've got the perfect guest. I am Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman. You're right here, exclusive to the MeidasTouch Network and our Substack. I'm excited to have this conversation with Senator Andy Kim. Let's get on with the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am Fred. Well, as I already brought the senator in, as mentioned before the intro, I am Fred Wellman. We have, of course, Senator Annie Kim, the freshman senator from New Jersey now, who's had, I showed that picture of you cleaning the Capitol, as you saw before we went to the music. And, I kind of talk about this slide towards indecency. You started your career in Congress cleaning up after Trump followers, and now you're in the Senate cleaning up after Trump followers. I mean, does it shock you sometimes how quickly in the last 2 months we really have slid as sort of an indecent time, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure others feel it too, but like there definitely are moments where I'm just like this is so surreal. Like, is this really happening right now? And especially when I get home to my kids, they're 7 and 9 years old now, and like I just like it's so sad. I keep saying like I'm so worried about what kind of America my kids are gonna grow up in. And I just I grew up in a time when I was taught and I to respect the presidency, the president, even if it
Yeah.
was a party that we disagree with. But now, like I have to, tell my kids like, he is not somebody to emulate. He is not somebody to look to as an example, as a moral example or leader. And it's just that's sad, that we have lost that sense of morals with one another, how it is that we just treat one another. And, just it feels like we're just in this tailspin right now as a country. And what I also just can get a sense of is like, the president's actions, his behaviors, it brings others down to his level,
Yeah.
right? It just
Yep.
like the gravity of it makes us, it feels like we're this nation addicted to anger right now. So
Yeah.
it's truly, truly horrific.
And you've been seeing that. Yeah, I know you've done. I was doing the research for the show. You've done a ton. You've done like 3 or 4 town halls recently. You were just in Brick Township, my ancestral home, by the way.
Wow.
My mom and
Amazing.
my mom and my grandparents are from Brick. My uncle who passed away in the Air Force. He's on the memorialized there at Brick Township. I mean, and you're hearing that anger though is on our side too. There's a frustration and anger amongst your electorate. Your constituents who are frustrated seeing they're happening, isn't it?
Yeah, well, look, yeah, I ended up doing 3 town halls last week in 3 consecutive days in the 3 Republican congressional districts in New Jersey. And so these are deep Republican. I mean, Bricktown, Ocean County,
Yeah.
like I think Trump won it by like 30 points plus, maybe. I mean, it was a lot. Um, but like, look, I think that's important to go and have those conversations there. And I had some people tell me like maybe you shouldn't do it. There's a lot of public angst out there. But I said that's exactly why I need to do this. And I've been saying this line a lot lately, where I say like if you're only having comfortable conversations in politics, it means you're not talking to all the people you need to be talking to. Like our job should inherently be uncomfortable because I represent 9 million people. There's no way every single one of them is going to be thinking I'm doing a great job, right? So like
Right.
get on out there, talk to people because it's our job. Like no one forced me to do this job. No one forced any member of Congress to do this job. So, like, if you want the job, like, this is what comes with it. And I stand before the town hall. I say, whether you voted for me or not, you're my boss. My job is to serve you to the best of my ability. And we kind of we go into it. But yeah, people were they're just you know the way I also described is like they are filled with such anxiety right now about what
Yeah.
comes next. Someone
Right.
was conveying to me that it's like hard to breathe sometimes because it just
Yeah.
feels like we have so much weight. And I find that to be so sad that like in the richest, most powerful country in the world that we're filled with this much unpredictability about what comes next. And as a parent, as an American, like it scares me. And so that's what people are rejecting. They're saying like, no, we don't have to live this way. We don't have to live with this kind of anxiety. Why has this been brought upon us? Why is it? And also like when we see such blatant lawlessness, I mean, not even like borderline lawlessness, but blatant lawlessness, how is it that we can't stop it? The checks and balances, why don't they won't working? So like that's what people are getting at, and they should have every bit as much right to raise that because it is showing the brokenness of our politics and the inability for us to be able to have all the tools that are needed to be able to have a more secure democracy, and so they are right to feel the anger that they feel.
And it's just there every day. Doge is dismantling. I was thrilled to see you show up at USAID. You used to work at USAID. You started your career at USAID, and then of course you served the highest ranks in Afghanistan. I mean, it's got to be shocking to see what blatant and gets in their lawlessness, right? The president can't just dismantle an agency that was created by senator by law, right? But so every day you're fighting this ridiculousness. I mean, do you feel frustrated? I mean, do you feel powerless sometimes? I mean, it has to be tough being in just the slightest minority like you are.
Yeah, it is tough. I mean, I came into Congress because I saw the last time that Trump had, the White House and the Republicans controlled Congress, and they were trying to gut the Affordable Care Act and things like that. So, that's what compelled me to step up and say, I want to help flip the House of Representatives so we can restore some checks and balances. And this is my first time being in office when the Republicans hold, that trifecta of power, and it is enormously frustrating. But it's also just like so sad. Like why do you want to be Speaker of the House if you're not actually going to do the job and you're just going to
Right.
relinquish that to the press? Like, do you really want to be known? Does Johnson really want to be known as the Speaker that just handed over the legislature to the executive branch? Is that really the legacy that he wants? Like my former colleague, Senator Rubio, now Secretary Rubio, does he really want to be the secretary whose legacy is the dismantling of, foreign assistance and diplomacy in America? And it's just like, it's sad. It really is. Like just watching that abdication of leadership, and seeing those that can do something with the gavels in Congress unwilling to do so. And it really shows me. I mean, like, I know that, and I'm sure we'll talk about there, questions about what does the Democratic Party do, and the challenges and weaknesses there. But it really also exposes just the weaknesses of the Republican Party. Like that is not a party on that side. It has been, just consumed by the Trump MAGA, movement. Yeah, and there's nothing there that resembles any sort of normal party structure. It is all just not just loyalty, but fealty to Trump, and just he can do whatever his beck and call, and that just shows you just how dangerous this is. It's very much kind of like what George Washington warned about in his
Right.
in his farewell address about the dangers of tribalism and political parties, that it can get to this kind of phase where it's just kind of consumed by just that sense of tribalism and difference.
And that's where we are. And you brought it up. I mean, I know you were getting hit in your town hall. I watched it about, Democrats doing more. I know you disagree with Senator Schumer's decision to let the CR go. So now you've got a battle for the actual budget. I mean, what are you guys? What are we doing? I know there's a lot of frustration out
Yeah.
here. It's like, hey, what are you guys doing? How do you answer that criticism? Like, what are you going to do? What's next for you? How do you stop this cascade of outrageous actions?
Yeah, well, like, look, I mean, that's the reason I want to do the town halls, right?
Yeah.
Is like I wanted to show like that this is how we go on offense. We go and push the Republicans on their heels, showing that they're afraid to show up because they know the toxicity of what they're actually trying to do. So we got to lead into this. What I portrayed at the town halls, and I'd be interested in your reaction, but I try to say, hey, look, well, we can't just say we're fighting against this lawlessness. We have to really show what are our goals that we're trying to achieve. So
Yeah.
I'm still working this out, but in the town halls, I ended up kind of putting out 3 ideas on how we can try to rally, because what we need right now is not just to look at my work as a legislator or as a political leader, but we need to be part of a broader societal movement right now.
Right.
And so what I laid out was sort of 3 goals, saying like we need to save Medicaid, we need to stop these tariffs, and we need to expose the corruption of this administration. And I do think focusing in and on these issues that are so potent right now. I mean, people are furious about what's about to happen potentially on Medicaid when, we
Yeah.
talk about people with disabilities, seniors in long-term care centers. 1 in 3 kids in New Jersey gets their health care through Medicaid. People are furious about these tariffs, small businesses, the business community,
Yeah.
others that are understanding how much this is going to raise the cost to the American people at a time when
Everything.
that's what
Yeah.
people wanted it from the election last year, was to help lower the costs. And
Yeah.
Trump is not only not doing it, he's making things worse and exposing this corruption that we see, not just obviously the blatant corruptions, for instance, of Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, who is also funding super PACs while he's dismantling government. I mean, that's clearly just common sense wrong. But also the corruption of trying to gut Medicaid to be able to bring then trillions of dollars in tax cuts to the biggest corporations, the wealthiest Americans. So that's just my way of just trying to push forward and try to say, like, we need a simple message that shows what we're trying to do, like what we should be doing. Instead of just reacting to the Republican budget, we should be putting forward our own and saying, like, this is what we stand for. This is what is a budget that is about protecting our democracy, human decency and dignity of healthcare, Social Security, other things. And here's what Speaker Johnson and Trump and Elon Musk are trying to do. I think that is something that pushes us in that direction. So, in 2017, when I first thought about running for Congress, the way I said it to myself at the time was, I'm not going to just assume that someone else is going to fight my fights for me. I'm not going to assume that someone's just going to step up and take this mantle on. So that's why I just said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do these town halls. I'm going to put together, my own thoughts on the strategy for the party, for the Senate, and, just start executing it, as well as just trying to mobilize and get other senators and other people around the country to engage. And if they have thoughts and ideas, like, I'm open to their reactions. But I'm just like, we need to be able to make that type of progress for a strategy that can meet this moment.
And I think that I love that. And I think that's right, because there's frustration with this constant talk about, well, the prices of eggs, like, it's just not resonating. These are things that are going to really impact people's lives, and they're going to be very immediate. I mean, I did a piece the other day talking about, you talk about Medicaid as a perfect example. Majority of people who are in nursing homes are using Medicaid and I believe New Jersey is one of the states where there's familial responsibility. If your parents, even if you're not connected to them, well, you are responsible for their debts, their medical debts. Your state's one of them. So if Medicaid and Medicare go away in a real way, the nursing homes or anything else, the collapse will be unbelievable, right? It's just, and shocking. They'll have, and I want to transition kind of like that third part you mentioned too. We have a massive scandal, which I'm not sure enough people understand why this signal issue is resonating so much, especially with someone like you. You're a national security guy like me. You served in Afghanistan at the highest levels. And I can't help but think, if you had texted to your wife at home over Signal or some other device that there was a raid going on in 3 hours, how soon would you have been on an airplane out of the country? I mean, and it's hard for me to explain, to people who don't understand the national security aspects, how dangerous this was to those of us who serve. I was a helicopter pilot. I flew those missions, and the idea that someone was sending out our target time ahead of time is shocking. I mean, it's much more of a scandal than I think a lot of people realize, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I worked on the diplomatic side, and I was in the Situation Room for a lot of these discussions that gave the green light to major military operations. And just the idea that, I mean, like, there is like like, when that happens, there is this sense of, like, responsibility amongst those of us who know the details, that, like, we have, our first and foremost job is to protect those who are about to go into harm's way. And just like the idea that, that the Secretary of Defense is putting forward, the exact time, as well as the type of weapon system platform that is being utilized, where, if that's out there, people can know which direction they're coming from, if it's a carrier group or from a base or else. And, like, that's just, like, so dangerous. And I already already knew and spoke out against this nominee, and when he was a nominee for Secretary of Defense. And it just shows and exposes what we already knew, which is, he is not fit for this job. He should not be doing this, and he's putting people's lives at risk, and he's putting our country at risk. And we're seeing, if they did this for, this Yemen strike, I'm sure they were doing this for any number of other consequential decisions.
Right.
And and they're doing it to avoid FOIAs. They're doing it to avoid, the legal needs that we have to understand what the executive branch is doing. So it's just, yes, I hope it gets exposed, and I hope Tag Seth resigns, because that is what is needed at this moment. But it just, yes, it is something that very much puts our national security at risk.
Yeah, and the doubling and tripling down and trying to say it wasn't classified, it's frustrating to so many of us. I mean, it's like there's no responsibility. You always constantly talk about this warrior ethos crap, you know, and all that. And one of the biggest things, the warrior ethos, all of us were taught. I was taught as a young soldier, a cadet at West Point, for God's sake, which is in a different century, for Christ's sake. You know, we were taught, you know, a warrior, a leader takes responsibility for their actions, right? And consistently, we don't see that in this administration. Consistently, in this administration, it's always somebody else's fault. I mean, even the littlest things. I don't know if you saw the other day where Trump, when he was asked about the 4 missing soldiers in Lithuania, he was like, "No, I haven't heard." Yeah, there's no sense of
Yeah.
responsibility for the awesome weight. I know you feel it. Like, you know, I visit the White House, or I visit the Capitol where you work on a daily basis. You feel that awesome sense of responsibility. You walk in there, don't you? And it just feels like these guys don't feel that responsibility to all of us, do they?
Well, they don't feel it in the right way. They feel it
Yeah.
in a way that is about their own ego, their own personal prestige, but not in the sense of like the gravity of being at the helm of the most powerful nation in the world. I mean, like, we just recently had a hearing in Congress, in the Senate about, about the Washington D.C. airport collision between the helicopter
I was
and
there that
the
night.
aircraft. And like, you remember what Trump said afterwards? I mean, like, just
Yeah.
blaming it on DEI. I mean,
Yeah.
I just, again, it was like one of those moments where you're just like, is this really happening? Like, is this really what is? And it's just is shocking, just like how he would just immediately do something like that at such a moment of tragedy for this country. And so, yes, like, like we have to figure out how to try to keep this country moored at a time when it feels like we are just drifting, and not only drifting, but like, what I see right now is very much the signs of just, the beginnings of the decline of America in a real way. Like, I was out there at the Munich Security Conference. I was there in the room when Vance gave one of the most disgraceful foreign policy speeches I've ever heard an American leader give. And like, just seeing this moment of just like, and this is what I hope the American people understand. This isn't just about policies about Ukraine or about USAID and foreign assistance. This all comes together actually in a very cogent and, in my opinion, very dangerous policy and doctrine from Trump, which is about American neo-isolationism. It's about withdrawal from the rest of the world. This idea that when he says America first about foreign policy, what he really means is America alone. That he wants America to be alone and isolated. And does anyone actually think that's a good idea? It's going to make us less secure. It's going to make our economy weaker. It's going to make our businesses, have less penetration into other markets. And it's going to embolden our adversaries. I mean, Putin and President Xi and the Iranian regime and the North Koreans couldn't be happier right now.
Yeah.
And I just find that to be, so disgraceful on so much sacrifice over the last 100 years by Americans to get us to this point.
And you have to fight each battle as it comes, which is hard because they're coming fast and furious. I mean, it must be. I mean, how do you see I mean, just you're in the Senate. How are you and your colleagues? Are you organizing? I know it's hard right now. Everybody's kind of trying to do their thing. Do you feel like there's an organizational movement occurring in the Senate? I mean, do you see your colleagues kind of coalescing? And I guess the second part of that question is, your Republican colleagues. I don't know if you're even talking to any of them, and you got some real nutters up there, by the way. My God. But are they seeing it? I mean, I saw Thune say that they should investigate the signal thing. I saw the Senate Armed Services Committee, both party leaders said, hey, we need to investigate this. This is serious. Do you get a sense that maybe they're starting to realize just how dangerous this is? Now we're reaching a point of no return, aren't we?
I hope that they're understanding that, and certainly some conversations behind the scenes,
Yeah.
are seem to be different than some of the public rhetoric. But it is, especially on the national security side, I think there's an opening to really try to create some space. But look, as like I said, I'm a father of a 7-year-old, 9-year-old. So I often say, like, let's not play pee-wee soccer where we all just chase the ball. Like, we need to have, positions here. We need to have a strategy here. And when you look at everything that's happening right now in the news, it's overwhelming. And we always, the word that we always use is chaos. But what I want the people to know is that this is their plan. The chaos is their plan. This is purposeful chaos. This is what Trump is intentionally trying to do. What Russell Vought at OMB intentionally is trying to do is to overwhelm us, to throw out so many different problems out there simultaneously that we are unfocused. And yes, that doesn't mean that we're not taking on and trying to address these different needs. But that's why I was sort of saying, like, for me, at least my opinion, is that idea of, like, saving Medicaid, stopping these tariffs and the high prices, and exposing the corruption need to be a guidepost. When I won in 2017, 2018 in that election cycle, it was because a repetition of a powerful message about stopping the healthcare cuts, preventing the Republicans from gutting pre-existing condition protections. I remember someone asked me another question. They were like, what do you think about, these attacks upon, there was some attacks upon me and my character in some ads. And like some journalists asked me about that. I said, oh, well, I'm really glad you asked me about how we can lower prescription drug costs. That's exactly what we need, and like we need to be able to stay on message, to be able to penetrate through and have that repetition, to have and find the issues with the greatest salience, with the type of communities we need to get on board with. And again, that doesn't mean we're not trying to stand up and fight for the other types of oppression that we're seeing right now. But in terms of how we're trying to mobilize, I do think we need to have that sense of consistency in our message right now.
And I think that's a great direction to go. And there's 40 of Democratic senators, and what we're seeing, and I think is the right direction, frankly, if I would have, not to agree too much, but let the fights in the courts. I mean, there's so many special group. I had Democracy Action on the show. We've had others fighting in the courts, but you're right. The senators need to focus on a few things that you can do at your level and not chase every ball. Is a huge issue, and it's good to hear the focus is right. I mean, the corruption is unbelievable, and the corruption goes to the root of everything we see, and it does seem to be like overwhelming the system.
And that's
But it does also
is resonant. I mean, like,
Right.
I am in the Senate because of a corruption scandal in New Jersey.
Exactly. You beat me
And
to it.
I saw how, like, when you're seeing such distrust in government, so many people, the highest level of distrust in government in modern American history, it's so much because of that sense of corruption, that sense that the status quo does not work for me. It is captured by the billionaires, the big corporations, the special interests, and in large part, people are correct. And like we have to show that we are pushing in a different direction. Trump was able to position himself as a disruptor, and that was something that people resonated with. And look, what I showed is like I took on the machine politics in New Jersey and changed the way we do our elections here in New Jersey. Like I was trying to show I can be a disruptor in a different way. And I think the Democratic Party absolutely has to find that gear of showing that we stand against that sense of corruption, that's against that sense of elitism and entitlement of broken politics, and are trying to lead the charge against what we're clearly seeing, which is an effort to take away health care for those in this country that need it most and give that money. They're not trying to, pay down the deficit with those savings.
No.
They're trying to just pump it right back in to the billionaires, to the biggest corporations, and create an even greater level of inequality in our country than what we see right now. And that's what we need to expose and show to the American people.
Perfect place to finish. And you're right, because it does go to everything. I think those are great. Those are core processes to go for, because every one of the issues you're touching, Medicare, Medicaid, tariffs, and the corruption, they are the root cause of almost everything we're seeing in these groups, in this movement, I suppose. Kudos, user. I know you're a busy man. Thanks for the time. I really do appreciate it, and taking time for all of us. And I wish you the best of luck up there, and keep up the fight like you always say. I don't have to tell you that.
Thanks, Fred. Thanks for keeping up the fight yourself. Take care.
Thanks for joining me. Hey guys, I'm a veteran of the Army. I've grown up with weapons. I served carrying weapons. I've always supported my Second Amendment rights. And I was raised by a Marine himself. And one of the things, the first thing my dad taught me as a kid was properly securing your weapons if you have them in the home. I've got kids. I have grandkids. The last thing on earth I ever want to have is an unsecured weapon in the home where the wrong people can get their hands on it. But at the same time, I need to have access on it for personal defense and security, which is one of the reasons most of us have weapons. That's our right. StopBox Pro is 100% mechanical. So there's no batteries. You just have a key code and it opens the box right up. It's safe. It's easy. There's no doubt you can get to your weapon if you need it in a hurry, but then it's also secured safely. And you'll be surprised just how incredibly well made they are and durable. A high quality American made product right here in the USA that can help you keep your family safe in every way, both to have your weapon if you need it in the worst case scenario. But on top of that, even more importantly, make sure the wrong people cannot get their hands on a weapon unsecured. I'm a huge fan of StopBox. They're all made right here. They have their own facility to make all these products right in the United States with meaningful, good work for Americans, producing an important product to keep our families safe. Now, for a limited time only, our listeners are getting a crazy deal from StopBox. Not only do you get 10% off your entire order when you use code FRED10, that's FRED10 at 10 at StopBoxUSA.com. They're also giving you a buy one, get one free for their StopBox Pro. So that's 10% off and a free StopBox Pro when you use code FRED10 at StopBoxUSA.com. So discover a better way to balance security and readiness with StopBox. Thanks for being a sponsor of the show. Conversation. And we've been hitting, and if you watch the show, I've been hitting the senators up quite a bit in the show and in my writing about coming out with the coalescing around certain messages. I like this. I like the idea. We have to save Medicaid. We have to save Medicare. We're talking millions of Americans, 73 million Americans without health care because of these cuts. And they're not lazy. They're not people who aren't working. The idea that these are people staying home playing video games is patently ridiculous at every level. It's millions of people in nursing homes. It's millions of children of people who can't work. It's disabled people who can't work. The idea there's a work requirement when you're unable to work is the whole point of having the system we have. This will cause heartache and pain, literal pain, and death in America. The tariffs are affecting everyone. Don't be fooled. The tariffs will affect everyone. My own family, my daughter owns a small business. Their supplies where they make soap and candles and stuff like that are going up because of the tariffs. It all affects every little business And finally, the corruption is the root of everything we're talking about here. Corruption is the root of the Trump administration, number two. Corruption is everything from his crypto meme, his meme coin that he's actually flogging on his official channels, to Elon Musk dismantling the organizations that are holding him back, to all of his friends too. It is a corrupt kleptocracy that we're dealing with. And that is the root of so much of what they're doing. It has nothing to do with efficiency, has nothing to do with making the government better. The VA dismantling is something they've been dying for. The Koch brothers have been trying to get the VA privatized for over a decade and a half. And now they're there. Cutting 83,000 employees isn't meant to make it better. It's meant to make it fail. And when it fails, they can say, hey, we tried to fix it, but couldn't do it, so let's privatize it. It's the same thing they've been doing to our schools for 20, 30 years. You underfund them, you cut them, you get kids to go to private schools. The schools do worse. They say, look, schools are failing because they caused them to fail. That's the plan. And we're seeing it unfold in real time. And luckily, we've got senators like Andy Kim who get it. We're very privileged to have him join the show. I'm thrilled to have him. As always, you can find us. I've been so busy. I haven't been telling you things. You can find us, all of our shows, in the On Democracy channel on YouTube. You can find me at Blue Sky at FP Wellman, on all the Blue Sky stuff, official FP Wellman Instagram. I'm still on Twitter because that's where we can talk to these people and yell at them a bit. You can always find us here. You can find us right here exclusively Friday nights on the MeidasTouch channel. I'm really just a pleasure to be with the guys as we add more viewers and followers. Again, it's very important that you participate in this. I think the key you saw was the Senate is coalescing, our elected officials are coalescing around the things they can do. But we have a responsibility in all of this. We have a role to play, be it protests in the streets that are growing. I'm participating in a couple coming up, be it suing these fools for the illegal things they're doing, being holding them responsible, holding the media responsible for their role in all this. We have a role, and otherwise we're going to lose the democratic republic that we have if we let this oligarchy and these elites take everything we've ever worked for. So with that, I'll leave you alone. I am Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with F. Wellman. This is Fred Wellman. This is on MeidasTouch. This is On Democracy Channel. This is a very tired guy. You've got another interview to do. Thanks for joining me this week, guys. I can't wait to see you next week. Thanks.